Thank you for coming on Frankly Speaking.
Good to be with you, Arnav.
And it's good to see you now in a completely different capacity. The last time you came on the program, you were in the running for the Secretary General's position.
Yes, and we don't need to go into how that ended.
But I wouldn't have imagined, say 4 months back, even when you were in the running for your seat from Thiruvananthapuram, that I would be sitting in the same room where I interviewed Pranab Mukherjee, just on the eve of the elections, with Shashi Tharoor as Minister of State for External Affairs.
Well, I wouldn't have imagined it either, because, you know, I was told on the 19th of March that the next day I would be announced as a candidate for Thiruvananthapuram. Ballots were cast on the 16th of April, results were known on the 16th of May, and a week later I was given this news. So it's been an absolutely bewilderingly rapid transformation in my life, and obviously I've sort of gone along with the roller coaster, but it's been quite an experience.
I have 4 basic issues I want to raise with you in the course of this interview. But before that, at a personal level, when a person is successful and meteorically successful, as you have been, touch wood, this year, they say you make more enemies than you make friends.
I've heard that. I've heard that. I've heard that. No doubt my back will be perforated before too long, but so far, you know, I think honestly the thing in our country is that we have, shall we put it very bluntly, sometimes a tendency to bring down our own, and that's been a widely rumored national characteristic. But I enjoy people for what they are and what they say to me to my face. So to this day, since people are not prepared to say anything to my face that they may be saying behind my back, I have a fairly blissful existence.
That is very good advice. That should be passed down as a Shashi Tharoor quote. My first issue with you tonight is India's soft line on the brutalization of Indian students in Australia. Why are we taking such a soft line on an entire matter, which, as you know, Times Now reported this first, and it's led to such outrage? Why are we being so careful?
Well, first of all, we have to be careful on anything involving foreign relations, but that's not the answer. The answer is that I challenge your argument that we've taken a soft line, because initially, on the central issue of the attacks on the students, our line was anything but soft. It was one in which we made no bones about our concern and our anguish about these things happening to our citizens in a foreign country. But where we parted company with some of your coverage and some of the demands being made by people in our country was in the attempt to escalate it into a bilateral problem between India and Australia, which it is not. What it is a challenge for the Australian government to protect Indian citizens on their territory. And we, as the government of India, can do 2 things which we have both done. One, we have conveyed our concerns very clearly and at the highest possible level to the Australian government. We're talking about the Prime Minister speaking to the Prime Minister. Believe me, on most issues, the Prime Minister of India doesn't speak to a foreign country's Prime Minister. No. That is to convey our concern, number one. And we've done that firmly and clearly. Number 2, we've instructed our High Commissioner and our Consul Generals in Sydney and Melbourne to do everything possible to give practical assistance to the students, and indeed their family members came visiting. For example, here, when I got word from a Haryana politician about a parent whose child had been attacked who never had a passport, we broke all records and gave them a passport in one day to go and see their son. Those are the things we're doing.
No point do I discount the sincerity of yourself or your government in raising the issue and the concerns. Issue is, I would disagree with your view that the attempt of channels like Times Now is to turn this into a bilateral dispute. Why would Times Now want to make it a bilateral dispute? The only issue which Times Now raised at that point of time was that the overwhelming statistics and the information on the ground would suggest that these were not opportunistic muggings going on, that they were racial in nature. The attacks were racist in nature. Not once has your government said, Shashi, that these are racist attacks.
I may have said that. I myself have said
these racist attacks
that some of these attacks clearly are racist in their impulse and their motivation. Some may have been opportunistic, some may have been imitative. We don't know, and we're sitting here in Delhi. We can't really judge the nature of these crimes. What is important is to leave the Australian government in no doubt on the one hand, and then to support them in their efforts to clamp down on this. The Australians have given us clear assurances that they are taking the necessary action in terms of their law and order challenge, and they're taking the necessary action to try.
But nothing's happening on the ground. I'm reporting not an Indian channel, not Times Now. ABC Radio, Channel 9, the latest attack this week on Resham Singh, Clear racist attack, and it
because he
required
was a
channel
visible Indian, as it were.
It's not the Indian media saying now. It's saying
That's true.
It's the Australian media saying these are racist attacks.
But Arnab, what exactly would you have us do? You speak of a soft line.
Yes.
My point is, this
Yes.
is the only possible line.
Why should that be?
Because there is nothing more that the government of India can do on the territory of the sovereign state of Australia to protect Indians there.
But on its own, it can do more.
No, on its own, what we can do, we've done. Let me make one thing clear. I know that a certain political party, in reaction to something I said, we condemned apartheid in South Africa, why shouldn't we condemn this in Australia? Very simple. Apartheid was the policy of the government of South Africa. Racism is not the policy of the government of Australia. The government of Australia is opposing these racist attacks. So we're not going to stand up and condemn a government when the government and our government are on the same side on this issue.
The Supreme Court told you this week to do more.
We are certainly going to tell the Supreme Court what we have done. I mean, that's obviously an obligation on our part, and we shall do so. But you must understand, we cannot do anything more in Australia than we would permit the Australian government to do in India to protect their nationals.
Totally take your point.
And they make the point that 20 Australians have been killed in India in the last 5 years.
Why can't we officially issue a warning to Indian students, which may serve then, instead of giving a certificate to the Australian police's attempts to improve the conditions for Indian students in Australia, which is not the case. They're only going on a PR overdrive. Why don't we issue a warning to Indian students against studying in Australia, given the present situation, unless we are convinced that enough is being done to protect our own?
First of all, we don't think it's necessary, because we think that the Indian students who are smart enough to go to Australia are smart enough to read the media, watch your show and others, and know what's going on in Australia. They can make their own judgments, number one. Number two, when you take a step like that, it has implications for your bilateral relationship with another country. If you're going to say, don't go to Australia to study or be warned against going, that's an unfriendly gesture to Australia. And we don't believe, because we're not sending the students. If the Indian government were sending the students to Australia, the Indian government has certain kinds of responsibilities that are different from which of individual Indian citizens, in exercise of their freedom of movement and their right to go and study wherever they want to, are going on their own. These are individual decisions for the students and their families. They're not a decision for the government of India.
But you're really washing your hands of the entire matter.
Well, look, I will not wash my hands of anything that is my government's responsibility, but in this particular instance, you're asking me about something which is not. It's a private individual's decision where they want to go and study, how much they want to pay, what course they want to take, which country they want to go to.
On Pakistan, 26/11, Shashi Tharoor, tell me, why are we talking to Pakistan? Simple question. Why is this government, and I'm not putting any words in your mouth, you and I spoke before the elections, we know your position, we know the position of the Congress party, we know the position of Pranab Mukherjee in interviews given in this room on talking to Pakistan. Everything changes after the elections.
It's not just after the election.
Everything's changed.
Time has passed. Time has passed.
Nothing's changed. No action.
Not talking indefinitely has to have a particular purpose. Now, our purpose is this. We can't choose our neighbors. They're our neighbors. They share the subcontinent with us. We need to live with them, and we need to live alongside them, number one.
No, but
number
did we say that before the election results? Before the election results, the line was this. The line was clearly this. Till we see substantial and concrete action on the ground.
That line has not changed.
26/11 case, there will be no talks.
That line has not changed. The entire business of a structured dialogue on a peace process, that is not happening. What is happening is that we are finally talking to people from Pakistan in other occasions where we can meet them, as the Prime Minister has met their President. Yes, we are.
We are not linking
it to action.
The Prime Minister
has said explicitly to the President that the purpose of meeting with the President is to convey to him how serious we are about needing to see action on the ground. The same thing is being said by Foreign Secretary Menon to their Foreign Secretary. The same thing is being said at every level of contact. Now look, we know that the government of Pakistan is itself facing internal challenges. For us to say to them that we will not even talk to you whether or not you're trying, that's not good
What
enough.
are we talking about?
We're talking about they're doing what they promised to do, and what they promised for some time.
But they have said we won't do it.
They've not said they won't.
They have said we will not return the 26/11 suspects. They have released all the JED suspects. They have released Hafiz Saeed. What is the one action, Shashi Tharoor, they have done which gives you the promise or the flicker of hope that they are moving in the right direction, and that these handshakes which are happening in China one day, which is now going to happen in Egypt one day, which happens in Italy on another occasion, What are these handshakes really worth, and what would you say to the people of 26/11, the victims of 26/11, why you're talking today, what has changed since then and now?
As an Indian, I'm also a victim of 26/11, each one of us is. This has been an assault on our national consciousness, and I'm not going to ever suggest that we're going to take that lightly. We're not. The point is very simply this. As far as 26/11 is concerned, we wanted to see action. We got some action early on. We got some arrests, as you know, in Pakistan.
All released.
And we have now been assured that there will be appeals filed in court on some of these releases, particularly the last one. Now, we're going to have to wait and see. I agree with you.
They have said the 26/11 dossier is not enough. A statement of finality has been made by Salman Bashir, who will be meeting Shiv Shankar Menon, if I'm not mistaken, Egypt sometime from now. And the entire premise was some action. I'm asking you again a second time on the show today. What is that little bit of action? It cannot be the promise of an appeal in a case in which, you know, Shashi Tharoor, not even one word was written by the prosecution as far as the case against Hafiz Saeed was concerned. Now that would be a slap in the face of the victims of 26.
Obviously, promises alone are not enough, and yet promises are what we have to go on at this point. In a process as sensitive as this one, we have to encourage our neighbors and those elements of the establishment of our neighbor whom we can talk to, because there are clearly others involved in that country whom we don't directly talk to do the right thing by us. But the fact of the matter is this. The anger we felt at the end of November 2008 has not dissipated, but we have to take the broader picture in view. We have to live on the subcontinent with Pakistan, and the Prime Minister has the bigger picture in mind. What has he said? He said, if you take some steps, we will meet you more than halfway. He's not said, you don't have to do anything.
So what are the steps for which we are continuing to meet them?
I think it would be unwise of us to prescribe their conduct. We have to react to the conduct that they actually show us.
I just have one point. There were three broad expectations that were listed out as Indian expectations post 26/11 in this roller coaster ride. The first was mutual legal assistance in the investigation of the Mumbai terror strike. The second was action against the main leaders of the Jamaat-ud-Dawa and the Lashkar-e-Toiba, whether they were directly involved in the terrorist strike or not. Whether they were involved or not, so it's not linked to the case. The third, action against the anti-India terror infrastructure in Pakistani territory. Now, Shashi Tharoor, you know, on none of these three parameters has Pakistan done anything. And hence I'm asking you, are you not worried about the symbolism of these handshakes? And why are these handshakes so important? Why is it important to meet again and again and shake hands unless it is under pressure from Hillary Clinton?
No, it's not under pressure from anybody else.
It would be linked to Hillary Clinton.
No, not at all, not at all. No, that's preposterous, Arnab. No, we're far too large a country to do anything because somebody else presses us to do it. Our Prime Minister has taken the larger picture and the longer term view in mind. The longer term view, we all want peaceful relations on the subcontinent. That is the ultimate objective. And the question we have to ask ourselves is whether we can help work with the Pakistani government to get us to a point where in the long term there will never be another 26/11 and where there will never be the kind of horrors we've had to go through, or whether we are going to consistently isolate ourselves from them in a way which leaves us with no avenues of communication should the next nasty little business start bubbling up. I want to say very clearly that we have not backed away from the line that we want to see the infrastructure of terror dismantled in Pakistan, that we want to see progress on bringing the perpetrators to book, and that we want real assurances that this will not be allowed to happen again. Now, the fact is, those assurances in the form of words alone are not enough. When we're getting those words, we need something concrete.
It appears
what that concrete thing is, they have to judge.
It appears, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Home Ministry thinks in one direction on this. The Foreign Ministry thinks in another direction on this. There was a congruence between both ministries in the last government, which is not appearing now.
Both ministries answer to the same Prime Minister. It's the Prime Minister who makes the policy.
Is there a bitter irony in the fact, two facts, that this week when the NSG up was opened up in Mumbai by Chidambaram, he confirmed the Times Now news report, in fact, to a great extent, that the threat around the western coast actually continues to exist.
Of course it does.
And there were intelligence reports which we put out on our channel. And isn't there a contradiction between that and the handshake that's going to happen between Shiv Shankar Menon and Salman Bashir?
No, there is no contradiction, because...
So they can continue to export... The LET can continue to export terror infrastructure in India, whether it's the West or the Northeast, and we will continue to meet them.
Arnab, we do not necessarily believe that the people we're shaking hands with are the people who are exporting the terrorists. What we're saying is that the people we're shaking hands with
on America, Mr. Tharoor, frankly, it appears both sides, India and America, are groping in the dark for something to hang this relationship on. Desperate attempt is being made from both sides. Do we detect something positive in what's going on? So the American officials can come and make Kashmir a bilateral issue, offer to mediate between India and Pakistan. Every time India's busy after, whether it's William Burns or anyone else who comes and makes a comment, the National Security Advisor, we are busy dusting the floor clean after their bizarre comments as far as India and Pakistan.
Really, honestly,
specifically, you know what I'm talking about.
But I don't think it's accurate. I don't think that the Americans are sending emissaries here to offer to mediate on Kashmir.
They're taking the Pakistani line on Kashmir. This Obama administration is taking, and you're one of India's most seasoned diplomats. The Obama administration, when Burns' comment that any resolution has to take into account the wishes of the Kashmiri people, is the Pakistani government's line. Now followed up with Jones's statement that the US will help India and Pakistan solve the Kashmir issue. I mean, this statement could have been from Zardari himself.
No.
Drafted by Zardari.
I think we should be wary of reading too much. This is like the interpreters of Shakespeare in literature classes. You take a phrase and read 10 meanings into it that poor Shakespeare may never have intended.
I'm only putting 2 phrases together.
No. You asked the fundamental question, what is there in this relationship? I'll tell you what there is.
No, you're broadening the question.
Extraordinary trade relationship.
You broaden the question.
There is an extraordinary amount of cooperation.
Mr. Tharoor,
there is the Indian population in America.
You broaden the question.
No. You asked what is in the relationship.
My question is specific. You broaden the question.
Okay, but I'm telling you the relationship.
That smile gives you away. You broaden the question, you're taking it in another direction. My question is on Kashmir.
On Kashmir.
Obama administration is compromising us on
the government of India believes very strongly in the wishes of the Kashmiri people. We have free elections in Kashmir, and the wishes of the Kashmiri people, as far as we are concerned, are expressed fully in those elections and through those means. And we see the elected representatives of the Kashmiri people sitting in the assembly in Srinagar, sitting in the government in Srinagar. They are the spokesmen of the Kashmiri people. At the same time, the government has listened to other points of view outside the government, as we often do in many parts of our country, and we see no particular problem with that. We have made it very clear to anybody who will listen, and that includes the US, Pakistan, anybody else, that we don't need any third party to help us solve our domestic or indeed our international problems.
Did we tell Jones that? Did we tell the American National Security Advisor?
I was not present at the meeting, but I have no doubt that there was no deviation from this existing policy.
Should he have made that comment?
Look, I'm not going to put words in anybody else's mouth, and I can't take words out of anybody else's mouth. What other people say is up to them. What they meant, you shouldn't overinterpret. From our point of view, our position is very clear. We know we have a problem in Kashmir. We know we have a problem with Pakistan. We also know that the nature of what has been coming to us from Pakistan vastly goes beyond anything that can be settled through amicable diplomatic negotiations. We would like to have all our problems with Pakistan solved amicably across the table, and not by people coming and blowing up our hotels.
It's not India's job to solve the problems in Pakistan. India's concern should be that with Pakistan, even in Pakistan.
In Pakistan, it's not our.
It's not our concern. But the money that America is providing Pakistan, the billions of dollars that are being pumped in, would you say, Mr. Tharoor, at least make that conditional? Because in the latest piece of American legislation, the conditionality clause was taken away.
No. It was.
That is what you've been pushing for so hard. Your government's been
but look, the conditionality clause is there with a reference to the word neighbors rather than the word India, which is fine. We are a neighbor, so obviously the weaponry is not meant to be used against neighbors. Look, we've had a fundamental problem with an approach from certain elements of the Pakistani military which have seen it being in their interest to destabilize their neighbors. We don't like that.
Yes.
We think that they'll be better off, as we will be, if everyone behaved properly with their neighbors, and that's something that's fine. As far as we're concerned, the US giving assistance to Pakistan to overcome the Taliban is not going to bother us, because it is essentially a cause that we also share.
How are you convinced that they will do so, when in the last 15 to 20 years they've been taking the aid
and not building,
and even other aid, they're not building dams with that aid.
No, I agree.
They're supporting the terrorists in Kashmir with that aid. You've been saying.
I've been saying it as a personal individual. I now say it as a Minister of State of the Government of India, that we know that an awful amount of American military assistance has been spent on equipment that can only be used against us. And we deplore that, and we hope that America, in giving its assistance, will target that assistance very specifically to things that will bring peace to
by
Pakistan.
By adding a conditionality clause.
Whichever means they use.
By adding a conditionality.
By making sure how that money is spent.
But is it bad to put a conditionality clause?
No, look, there is a conditionality clause I told you in the law, but that's not enough. It's making sure that the money is spent properly. A law is a law. The implementation is what we care about. We would like to see the Pakistani army strengthened in dealing with the Taliban. We would like to see the people of Pakistan benefiting from
another way in
projects.
which Pakistan can be stopped, and I know I'm going on and on about this, another way in which the Pakistani government can be stopped from misusing the money and not pointing it at India, apart from adding a conditionality clause. Why are you evasive on the issue of
supervision of the expenditure? I mean, you know, if I give you money because you tell me you want to eat and I see you buying cigarettes with it tomorrow, I could come to you rightly and say, look, I gave you that money, you to give those cigarettes back, take the money and go and eat.
So you want closer supervision? You tell
we would like to see some supervision of how money is being spent, because that is the purpose for which the money is intended, and that purpose is what we applaud.
I want to briefly spend some time on China, and there is a feeling that India is not coming clean with what really is going on the Indo-China front. There has been a massive deployment of troops on both sides. Levels have been raised in Arunachal Pradesh. China has gone and questioned Asian Development Bank assistance that has been given for use in Arunachal. Sukhois have been put on the Arunachal front. New air bases are being created. Is there greater tension with China right now? And why is all this being done? People have a right to know, Mr. Tharoor.
No, there have been some developments that have a logic of their own. I mean, the Arunachal objection and the ADB has outraged us. We're never going to find that kind of behavior acceptable. On the other hand, we feel that these matters can best be solved through talking frankly with each other, and I hope talking also amicably with each other. As far as the military deployments are concerned, there's a certain military logic to what we're doing, which is that the paramount responsibility of the Indian military is to keep India safe. We're not threatening anybody. We have no desire to take any offensive action, but we have to keep India safe on all its borders.
Just to quickly recap for our viewers, 10 rapid-fire questions at the very end. Some of this will be repetitive. Largely it will be repetitive. You can answer in yes or no, so maybe 2-3 words.
Well, you'll ask me questions I can't answer in yes or no.
Like you do on Twitter. There's a 20-character limit on the answers. So you will continue talking to Pakistan?
Talking short of a full-fledged dialogue until more action is seen.
Despite the attacks, no action having happened?
We expect more action to happen. Some action did happen. We want more to follow.
Despite the latest seizures, the latest intelligence bureau warning, and despite the knowledge about infiltration, you'll continue to talk?
No, the warnings,
despite everything,
the warnings mean we will be alert.
Despite everything, you'll continue to talk?
We will continue to meet, but we have not talked in a formal peace process yet.
You will not issue an advisory against travel to Australia, despite the attacks in
We're not planning to issue an advisory. We expect people to make their own decisions.
Despite more attacks, if more attacks happen, despite that, you will not issue even a warning or a caution?
We will keep speaking with the Australian government and see what's the best way forward.
Are the attacks opportunistic, mob attacks, unruly elements, or racial?
All of the above.
You can't say a mix of both.
It is all of the above.
Question.
No, but it's all of the above. There are certainly some that are purely opportunistic, some that are purely imitative, some that are purely racist.
Australian media reports suggest the deaths of Indian students in Australia have been suppressed. Would you at least tell the Australian government to come clean on that?
We believe some figures were released today.
You will continue to ask America to continue with its aid to Pakistan, irrespective of anything, whether or not it's conditional or not?
No, we want it to be spent wisely or for the purpose for which it's intended and not to be used against us.
Without adding a clause?
In whatever means legal as well as implementation.
You will tell the Americans not to make any more comments on involving themselves in talks on Kashmir?
But we think that some of these comments have been exaggerated in the media. We don't, we think the Americans understand our position.
But that's what Jones said. That's what William Burns said. How can they be exaggerated? I can read out their words for you.
It's all right. As far as we're concerned, we're not going to take it in that way.
Will you advise Hillary Clinton to do the same as well?
We don't advise foreign countries' foreign ministers. Come on. They can say what they like. Look, ultimately, Arnab, what matters is not what others say, it's how we react. I think you have to be confident that your government is quite capable of reacting in a wise, mature and calm manner, whatever others may say.
Last question. You are on Twitter with some 11,000 plus fans.
Apparently, yes.
People following you. How many of those are women? Because you told you've got a large women following.
Well, I can't really tell because I don't know who all of them are. Amongst those who send me comments, the genders seem to be equally divided.
Why would, last question, Why would anyone want to know what Shashi Tharoor is doing this instant or that instant?
I wonder, Arnav. I haven't even tweeted that I'm with you. So how could they not?
You can send a tweet on that one. Shashi Tharoor, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.